Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for day 3 of the Body-Worn Camera National Meeting. I'm Dr. Brittany Cunningham, the project manager for the Body-Worn Camera TTA program and also a site analyst. Today, we're going to begin with a presentation on performance measures. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Angela Bolchi. Angela?
Hello, thank you everyone so much for joining this session today on the Body-Worn Camera Policy and Implementation Program, or as you know, BWC PIP, on a session on performance measures. My name is Angie Belshi, and I'm an analyst for the BWC PIP on the Bureau of Justice Assistance's Planning, Performance, and Impact team. And today we're going to be discussing what is performance management at BJA and review how to report your BWC performance measures. So on the next slide, we'll just give you a brief overview of some of the items we'll be discussing today. Again, what is performance management at BJA, and explain the performance measurement process, and as well as its importance to BWC grantees as well as BJA. And then we'll cover the what, where, when, and how of reporting your performance measures in the Just Grant system. And then we'll end by providing some data reporting tips and best practices, as well as contact information and resources. And finally end with any questions you may have. So on the next slide, before we get started, we just want to make you aware, as many of you may know, specifically those grantees that have a BWC award prior to fiscal year 2021. As of January 2022, BWC grantees are now reporting in the Just Grant system. That's a transition from the Performance Measurement Tool, or PMT. So there may be some confusion about which help desk to call if you have questions, so we just want to clarify that here. If you have any questions regarding the performance measures themselves and any required questions that are asked of you, please contact the PMT tool help desk, which is contact information and hours provided on the left. We also welcome you to schedule a Welcome to BJA performance management session if you have additional questions. And please contact the Just Grant support team if you have specific questions related to the Just Grant system, such as creating accounts or navigating the system, help with unlocking your account or passwords, or any roles or permissions for grant award administrators or entity administrators, or if you receive any error messages in Just Grants. And their contact information and hours is provided again below. And again, just a tip, if you have any questions related to performance measures themselves, the questions, please contact the PMT help desk. And anything systems related, please contact the Just Grant support team. So the next slide, we'll get into what is performance management at BJA. Well, the work that you do as grantees is vitally important. So I'll explain what is performance measurement generally and briefly describe why it's important to the work that you do to BJA and beyond. Performance measurement is the process of which grantees regularly collect data, that is the measurement portion, on their grant activities and determine whether they are implementing those activities as intended and achieving their desired goals and objectives. This process helps us to tell the story that you and your programs through your data and assessment. Performance measures are used to capture the inputs, outputs, and outcomes of your program over time. Performance measures also help us look at pre- and post-program implementation to see if there has been any changes as your program evolves. BJA has established performance measure questions for each grant program. These measures can be found on the link provided at the end of this slide and also included in your program's solicitation. These measures may be updated throughout the life of your program. So on the next slide, we'll talk about why performance measures. Well, understanding the importance of performance measures ensures a strong program development. Performance measures provide opportunities to improve existing programs and help us create new ideas by showing raw outputs of program data. Performance measures allows you as grantees to answer the who, what, where, and when of your program. For BJA, performance measures provide us with a holistic view of your programs to identify areas of success and also potential opportunities for improvement. This allows us to understand how funds are being used and can inform strategic planning and future funding. In addition, this helps us identify and create targeted TTA that can help you as you continue through your performance management process. Not only does collecting performance measures help the Department of Justice comply with reporting requirements of the federal law, these include requirements such as the Government Performance and Results Modernization Act, or GPRA, as well as the Foundation of Evidence-Based Policy Making Act, as in addition to others. However, performance measures also provide a great benefit to you as the grantee. It can help proactively address any challenges that you may be experiencing and generate evidence that you are meeting your goals and objectives, and help show the impacts of your program and also your organization at large. Additionally, on the next slide, you'll see some examples of performance management reports. These help us, these reports are generated from your own performance measure data. These screenshots provide just front pages of annual program reports that use quantitative and qualitative performance measures to show high-level summary of grantee activity and achievement at the program level. These types of reports may be posted to the BJA website and also shared with the general public, as well as Congress and BJA leadership. So now we'll get into discussing what data you have to report, where to report it, and when you have to report it, and how. On the next slide, first, what are performance measures? Performance measures and performance management is simply the process of collecting and analyzing data that relates to performance. In this case, it relates to the performance of grantees that have received body-worn camera grants. This graphic shows a logic model and introduces a variety of types of performance measures that we may track towards identifying your goals and areas for improvement. Inputs refer to any program resources. Examples are grant funding, when we ask about what your program's funding allocations are by grant activities and personnel. Activities are the actions that convert the inputs to outputs and that are eventually result in measurable progress towards your program's goals. These can include things such as trainings, meetings, partnerships, and development, and data analysis. Outputs are countable products or services that result from these actions and activities. For the body-worn camera program, this may include the number of body-worn cameras purchased. And finally, outcomes speak to your larger program goals that you have identified in your application. Associated outcomes can be found at the end of the performance measure questionnaire, which we'll discuss more later. So on the next slide, we'll get more into what specific data you have to report. There are 3 types of questions or data types. The first is performance measures. These are a series of questions that help measure outcomes of your grant activities. The second type of question is narrative questions. These are a series of qualitative or narrative response type questions related to your specific goals, objectives, barriers, and successes. Finally, closeout questions are a series of questions that you only need to respond to when activities have been completed and your award is ending. On the next slide, you can find a link to the PDF version of your BWC PIP performance measure questionnaire. You can use this questionnaire as a guide to track your required data throughout the reporting period. Then when it's time to report it in the Just Grant system, you can have it readily available. Again, please note that the BWC PIP performance measures have been revised and slightly altered since reporting in the PMT system. So please be sure to review this questionnaire and reach out to the PMT help desk if you have any questions. Additionally, please note that this version of the questionnaire shows new BWC PIP categories 3, 4, and 5 with associated skip logic throughout the questionnaire. These questions will be deployed in JISC grants in fiscal year 2023. So please follow question logic and instructions for categories 1 and 2. If you require the version of the questionnaire that you will be physically seen in the JISC grant system, please reach out to the PMT help desk. Again, more information about performance measures generally and the specific questionnaire can be found at the link provided at the bottom of the slide. So where do you report? As I've already mentioned, you'll be reporting in the JISC grants or Justice Grant system. This is the required system for all BWC PIP grantees at this time. So you can access JISC grants resources, additional trainings, and other information through the links provided on the slide. Again, please contact the JISC grant support team for any JISC grant system related questions. Now, when do I report? On the next slide, you'll see the reporting schedule for BWC PIP grantees. You are required to submit performance report and your narrative questions semi-annually. Those are due January and July. The last reporting period of the award requires performance measures, narrative questions, as well as closeout questions. The final report is due 120 days after the award end date. On the next slide, you'll see a screenshot of how to access the performance report in JISC grants. So once you open a funded award, you'll be presented with a list of current tasks available to you and the assigned user for that task. If you are the assigned user, you will see the begin link at the bottom of the screen associated with each task. You must click the begin link in order to edit a task. Grant award administrators will also be able to access and see programmatic tasks. Selecting begin on that line allows a grant award administrator the ability to view and edit all tasks associated with an award, including performance reports, grant award modifications, deliverables, and initiating closeouts. To view all delinquent reports, please log into JISC grants and view your work list located on the home page. On the next slide, you'll see how to successfully submit your performance report. In order to successfully complete your performance report, you have to be sure to click Save and Submit. Please be sure to hit Submit on the survey page itself, as well as the Submit button highlighted below on this performance report page shown on the slide. So next, we will get into more detail regarding your specific BWC questionnaire and performance measures that you will be reporting. There are a few different types of questions that you may see when reporting your performance measures. First, multiple choice questions ask grantees to select the best response that reflects their project's activities during the reporting period. Multiple response questions allow grantees to select all responses that reflect their program's activities during the reporting period. Additionally, you will see open text responses for both numeric and text-related responses. If you do not know a data point, it is okay to report 9999 or unknown for unknown or not applicable answers. Finally, keep in mind that the JISC grant system has built-in skip logic based on your responses to other questions. So please answer any question that you see visible. For example, if you responded yes, that officers have received training on BWCs during the reporting period, subsequent questions will appear for you to answer, such as when did the training program begin? Again, please answer all questions that are visible to you. On the next slide, you'll see just an overview of the questionnaire structure and the sections that you'll be seeing as you complete your report. The first page of the BWC PIP questionnaire is the General Award Administration page. The first question asked of every reporting period is whether this is your last reporting period you will have to report data. By responding yes, the system will prompt you to answer closeout questions, and doing so will generate a final report. So please only respond yes if you have completed all grant activities and your award is ending. The other sections of performance measures include partnerships and community engagement, officer training, deployment of body-worn cameras, and personnel and quality assurance. On the next slide, we would like to highlight some specific changes that have occurred from transitioning from the PMT to Just Grant system. Several questions have been streamlined or removed, and here are some of possibly the most noticeable differences for you to keep in mind. For example, matrix-style questions or table questions that include rating scales have been removed and simplified to a single select or multiple select or select all that apply question. Additionally, the planning phase, which asks about your progress towards developing BWC policies and procedures, have been removed, and the number of sworn positions that have received BWCs is no longer asked. There have also been some minor wording changes and alterations as well. For example, previously we asked that grantees report the number of BWCs that have been repurchased cumulatively in addition to during the reporting period. And now you are only required to respond to the number of cumulative BWCs purchased since the beginning of your award. On the next slide, you'll see an example of what the survey looks like in Just Grants. Again, it is a survey style with select options, and you'll move through those sections that we have identified. And so here you'll see an example of the officer training section. So if you have responded that yes, there were training, that officers received training during the reporting period, you'll receive the following subsequent questions and answer, for example, how many total hours took place and the total number of officers that received training. However, if you responded that no officers received training, you will be directed to the next section. On the next slide, you'll see another example of a page for deployment of body-worn cameras. And this is what I was just mentioning. The first question will ask you to enter the total number of BWCs that you proposed in your application to be acquired as part of your grant funding. And then it'll ask you to report since the beginning of your grant program or cumulatively to enter the number of BWCs that have been acquired using BJA grant funds, and then the number of BWCs acquired using other funding sources since the beginning of your grant program. On the next slide, you'll see the list of semi-annual narrative questions that will help you track your goals and objectives throughout the reporting period. These questions should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, also called SMART goals. If you have multiple goals, you may provide updates on each one separately. All grantees must complete these 7 narrative questions each reporting period. So now we will get into some specific tips for best practices as you begin to report your performance measures. On the next slide, you'll see again the SMART mnemonic that will help you answer those 7 narrative questions. You want to ensure that you have well-defined goals in order to help clarify priorities and establish what are your criteria for success. And these SMART goals, having them in mind, will help you to achieve that. Be sure to reevaluate your goals semi-annually to determine whether any changes have occurred or any changes to your priorities or activities. Again, use your own data to understand your progress towards your goals and make any course corrections to your program as needed. On the next slide, we'll show you some examples of goals. The goals on the left are not necessarily SMART goals that will help set this program up for success. They are good goals, however, they are not specific enough to be measurable and see if you are making progress towards your objectives. However, the goals on the right are SMART defined goals, being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. On the next slide, we have some additional data entry tips. Again, as a reminder, JustGrants has a built-in set of skip patterns. So if you see a question, please answer it. And again, if you have any questions on any performance measures that you are seeing that do not seem relevant, please reach out to the PMT help desk. Numeric fields do require an entry, so if you have any unknown or not applicable data points, you may enter 9999 for that. Again, do not forget to submit your completed performance question set as well as in the performance question page on JustGrants. Again, narrative questions allow you to add additional explanations for any data points that you may have entered in your performance measures that may require additional context. Again, if you're unsure how to respond to any of the performance measures, please contact the PMT help desk. So in order to ensure data quality, we have some additional tips that you can incorporate into your performance measures from the very beginning. Be sure to designate staff for coordination on the performance data collection and ensure that the staff have participated in training such as this. Again, you can always reach out to the PMT help desk for any additional training necessary. If this is the first time that you will be reporting data into JustGrants, be sure that you are familiar with the data that you will need to collect and report. Again, you can do this by reviewing the PDF that has been linked in this slide. Again, I recommend that all grantees review the PDF as there have been some changes since reporting in the PMT. And also be sure to designate a backup person or persons and ensure that they're also aware of how to collect and report on this data in case they are needed to fill in for the designated person. Again, please be mindful of all the validation alerts into JustGrants and be aware that if we have any questions on the data provided by you, we may be reaching out for additional information. So now we would just like to share some and review some BWC data from prior fiscal years so that you are aware of have more information on the BWC program. So on the next slide, you can see the number of the funding amount that has been awarded by fiscal year across the past 7 fiscal years. There's been a range of funding from as minimum of 12 million up to this year, the greatest amount of 27.5 million. So you can see that the last 3 fiscal years have the largest amount of funding provided by BJA to state and local grantees for body-worn cameras. On the next slide, again, this is one of the main measures in the performance measure questionnaire is the number of cameras purchased using program BJA funds. So this figure shows the number of cameras that have been purchased during the last 6 fiscal years. So you can see that when the program started in fiscal year 16, there were just over 8,000 cameras purchased using program funds. However, in the latest fiscal year 2021, grantees purchased a little more than 13,000 cameras using program funds. On the next slide, you can see the number of officers that have received formal body-worn camera training. This is an important element of the program to provide formal training to officers who receive body-worn cameras. So you can see in this figure the range of officers that have received training over each fiscal year. Again, in the beginning of the grant program in fiscal year 16, there was just over 10,000 officers that have received training. However, since then, we've seen a strong increase in the number of body-worn camera trainings provided to officers. with over 19,000 officers receiving training during fiscal year 20 and over 16,500 officers trained in the most recent fiscal year 2021. Finally, on the next slide, we can dig a little deeper into the data for each individual fiscal year to learn more about how program funds have been used. So again, with over 16,500 officers trained during fiscal year 2021, we also asked grantees to report the types of trainings that they conduct to train officers. In fiscal year 21, you can see that field and classroom trainings were the most common types of trainings conducted, followed by in-service and annual and web and computer trainings. Academy and other types of trainings are less common, but still readily available. Examples of other trainings may include individual or one-on-one trainings and video trainings. In total, in fiscal year 2021, there were over 728 trainings conducted for officers. On the next slide, we would like to just provide some final resources and contact information for your reference. Specifically, again, the BJA Performance Measures webpage contains some foundational information and resources about performance reporting at BJA, as well as the contact information for the PMT Help Desk and Just Grant support teams. So be sure to click around on those and find any resources that may be relevant to you. We have also linked the BJA YouTube and multimedia page. There are some specific program performance measure trainings that may help you as you work through the reporting period. And we have also linked some Just Grant specific trainings. Again, this will be extremely helpful as you navigate the Just Grant system and also a Just Grant performance reporting job aid reference guide, which may be helpful as you navigate through the system to begin and submit your performance reports. So to complete it, before we move on to any questions that you may have for today, again, just want to make sure you have this information available. If you have any questions, who to contact. Again, please contact the PMT Help Desk for any questions related to the performance measures you are seeing. And please contact the Just Grant support team for any questions related to accessing or navigating the system. I think at this time, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat.
Hey, we'll wait for questions to come in. This is John Markovic, and I'm just going to piggyback on Angela's great presentation, which I think was very clear and detailed. One of the things unique about the body-worn camera program is we have a lot of smaller agency grantees. Let's say they got 5 cameras, their grant was limited to $10,000. It may be, the sheriff or the chief, him or herself, that are filling out these forms. I know some of you agencies don't have the luxury of having grant staff or a lot of administrative support. So we understand that, and please feel free to use the help desk. That's part of the reason why we developed the small, rural, and tribal micro grant program. But you guys, if you fit that category, you're grantees now, so you are expected to complete that. If you don't know something, you could, or it's not applicable, please fill out accordingly. You may not have use of force incidents to report or complaints that have any significant degree. So we wouldn't really be expecting you to show major reductions in those like we see in some larger departments, that we hope to see in some larger departments. And then just one comment about the graph that Angie showed about the expenditures per fiscal year. Those excluded some of the money we may have peeled off to the micro grant program, including the money that we peel off each year for CNA and their partners for training and technical assistance. And there was one year there, I think it was 2016, where we had to only keep we were limited in the grant solicitation period. So it was open for 1 month instead of the traditional 2 months. So we did get fewer applicants in that year. And then I just reiterate a point I made yesterday. So the benefit is this gives us obviously an opportunity to monitor your progress. But again, these data, when they're aggregated, are data that we can share with Congress, our funders, as to what the impact of the program was. So, obviously, we want to count and itemize the number of body-worn cameras that were bought with grant funds or through matching funds, or, and ideally maybe other sources that you use. And then other accomplishments and milestones, like, you may have reduced use of force, the quantity of the training and the quality of the training you did. The more information you provide us, the more we can substantiate the value of this program and hopefully continue to get funding. With that, I think we'll see if there are any questions that have come in.
I don't see any questions in the chat. We'll give it a couple more seconds to see if anybody has any. And thank you so much, Angie and John.
Well, thanks to Angie. I know that, I would say another thing is in terms of the transition. So, we are transitioning from the old PMT form, which was a fillable PDF, to just grants. So there's a little bit of growing pains this year. And then the PMT team, principally Angie and others, were very flexible. We try to keep a form, we continually collect data over the grant years. Last year, we added those 3 categories. So that was a major revision to the form as they were porting over to just grants. As I put in the chat, so categories 3, 4, and 5 are, start to take effect once we award the FY 2022 grantees. So they won't apply to you if you answer that you're a law enforcement agency deploying cameras or a state correctional agency deploying cameras. That would put you in categories 1 and 2, and the skip patterns should take care of everything else. So categories 3, 4, and 5 would not apply to 2022. And then now I see a question that came in.
Yep, I do see one question. When do we start reporting after cameras are in use? We plan to be live January 2023. This is from a site in Illinois.
Actually, because it raises a point that I was going to say. Usually, many of our grants, and some of them are pretty large. The grant isn't sort of considered officially starting until you start expending funds. Because of the nature of this program, oftentimes agencies only put in their budget the funds to cover the deployment, the purchase and deployment of body-worn cameras. But in earnest, you are in earnest beginning the grant program work before that, including when you're working with a TTA provider to complete the policy scorecard, or if you're self-certifying with a form. So that's really when you should start reporting, is really, the first opportunity you can. I think, just for the bulk of our grants, it sort of says, did you expend any grant funds? No. Why not? And, and then you don't have anything else to report. For ours, many of you are working sort of in essence on your own dime without putting in a budget for getting the policy scorecard squared away. So you are working on the grant, even though you're not drawing down funds.
And I see that Gerardo put additional guidance that supports what John was saying about reporting starts immediately after you accept your award.
Much simpler and straightforward than what I said. Thanks.
I will also let everyone know that we realized in Andy's presentation there were a lot of helpful links. Those are up on Whova. So the full presentation is up on Whova, where you can access those links. Your site teams can also guide you to those links if for some reason they're not working or you have additional questions. Okay, I don't see any more questions. Again, thank you, Angie, for your time today.
Thank you, everyone.